Hey everyone, this is Liz Brassoff from Thrust Flight. I'm the Chief Flight Instructor, and today we're going to talk about 141 training versus 61 training. So I think the first question that comes to mind is, what is 141 versus 61? Flight training and flying in general is regulated by the federal government, or the FAA, and these numbers refer specifically to the regulation code that we have to comply with. So 141 literally means regulation numbers 141, and the whole section there, and it talks about training at those types of schools or with those types of instructors. Part 61, same thing. It's a part of the regulations that has jurisdiction over those schools and those types of instructors. So it's important because of a couple reasons. Which part of regulation you train under determines how many hours you need to be eligible for your check ride. So for example, in a Part 141 private pilot curriculum, you have to have 35 hours of total time and 5 hours of solo time. In a Part 61 private pilot training curriculum, in comparison, it would be 40 hours of total time and 10 hours of solo time with a couple of sub-requirements. So let me tell you a little bit more basically about each regulation part and the changes you would see in your flight schools or your training for these two things. So a Part 61 school, there's a lot more of them in the United States. It's a little less regulated. There's not as much direct oversight from the FAA is what I mean. So the flight instructors and the flight schools that operate in it can kind of set their own tone and pace for your training, if that makes sense. If they want to use a specific syllabus, they can. It doesn't have to be approved through the FAA. They can even train without a syllabus, and it can just be the instructor's determination on what to do each lesson. The airplanes don't have to be individually inspected by the FAA for the flight school purposes. Of course, they still have to meet maintenance qualifications and other regulations that govern them, but it's a little different than for the approved training curriculum requirements. So in contrast, a Part 141 school would look a little differently. They have to use a syllabus. There's no option not to, and it has to be approved by the FAA. So it could be a syllabus that school has written specifically for the training curriculum you're looking at, or it could be one that's manufactured and commercially available, made by a large company like maybe Gleim or Jeppesen. This school also has really stringent requirements on their instructors and their airplanes because there's so much oversight from the FAA. So for example, a Part 141 school has to fly with every flight instructor they employ and that teaches in the 141 courses, at least annually, and they have to do initial checkouts in every single airplane they fly with a certain level of instructor, like a chief or assistant chief or check instructor. Part 61 schools, they don't have that. So if I worked as a flight instructor at a Part 61 school for 5 years, I wouldn't have to do any of those rechecks, at least not governed by the FAA. My school could still require it, but it's now just school by school procedures. Another pretty big difference between 141 and 61 is that in a 141 school, that required syllabus, like we talked about, has to include an event called stage checks. This is a small progress check that students have to go through that assess their ground and their flight knowledge before they move into the next stage or phase of their training. So for example, again, talking about a private pilot, they might have to take a stage check when they move from pre-solo to now able to solo, or similar milestones in instrument, commercial, etc. So it can be a nice quality check for a student, but if that's not the regimen or the structure you're looking for in your training, then perhaps a Part 61 school is a little bit better fit. It can be more fluid, treat you a little bit differently than other students because there isn't that required syllabus. And that's not to say a 141 school can't cater to you as an individual. It's just there's limits on how far they can. So the next question you might have regarding Part 141 and Part 61 training is, does every school offer both? They don't. Many schools only offer Part 61. Most schools that do Part 141 training offer 141 and 61 training, but it's possible that they're only actively enrolling students in their Part 141 curriculums. So it would depend on the school you're choosing. You also might wonder, does the student get to pick? If you're at a school that offers both Part 141 and Part 61 training, can the student pick which one they want to be in? That should absolutely be the case. You are the customer and it's your training, right? The schools are really trained and briefed on how to choose which one is best for you. So many schools will make that decision before really getting you too deep into your training program or the enrollment process. And from there, of course, you can make your preferences known. So in general, as a student, if I was trying to decide which one I would want to enroll in, I think a 141 has a lot of benefits to it. If I'm transferring from one school to another, usually 61 is the best pick all the way. But if you're starting from 0 in this particular rating or in your training in general, then the choice is really yours. So would I have a recommendation on which one to choose? Like I said, I think Part 141 training offers a lot of benefits. I think stage checks are really helpful to help verify you're getting the instruction you need from the instructor that you primarily work with. Having a syllabus, having homework outlined per lesson, that's all really beneficial. And there's no reason why you couldn't get that in Part 61 training. But in a 141 program, it's a guarantee. It doesn't now depend on how good of a flight instructor I got or didn't get at a Part 61 school. That about wraps up today's video on 141 versus 61 training. Leave us a comment below letting us know which one you prefer or which one you're actively training in. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos.